Have you ever wondered why the longest kept secrets often lead to the most powerful transformations? In a small bright village, where the sun painted shadows between mud brick houses and children's laughter echoed through narrow paths, a baby took 11 moons to be born, and that was just the beginning of her extraordinary tale. In a small bright village, a story began with a mother's extraordinary wait. Olu, known for her gentle smile and kind heart, carried her baby longer than any mother in recent memory. 11 full moons came and went as the village whispered and wondered about the child who seemed reluctant to join the world. On a night when the heavens unleashed their fury, with thunder crashing like 1,000 drums and lightning painting the sky in brilliant flashes, Amaraki finally decided it was time. The rain poured down in sheets, transforming the village's dusty paths into flowing streams, as if nature itself was preparing to welcome this special child. Inside Olu's humble home, where warmth fought against the storm's chill, the trusted midwife Auka stood ready. Her experienced hands had brought countless babies into the world, but something told her this night would be different. As the storm raged outside, Olu's labor pains intensified, each contraction bringing her closer to meeting the child she had carried for so long. When Amarashi finally arrived, with a cry as fierce as the storm outside, the room fell into a charged silence. Auka's skilled eyes widened as she examined the newborn. This child was different, special in a way that would shape not just their own life, but the lives of everyone in the village. Amaraki was born with both male and female characteristics, a rare occurrence that filled her parents with both wonder and worry. In the quiet moments that followed, as the storm began to settle and Amaraki nursed contentedly at her mother's breast, a hushed conversation took place. Olu and her husband, their voices barely above whispers, made a desperate plea to Auka. Please, they begged, keep this secret. We'll give you a piece of our land, the fertile plot near the stream, if you promise never to speak of what you've seen tonight. Auka looked down at little Amaraki, so perfectly formed despite her uniqueness, and felt the weight of this request settle in her heart. In all her years of midwifery, she had never been asked to keep such a significant secret. But as she watched the love and concern in the parents' eyes, she understood their fear. In their small village, where different often meant difficult, they wanted to protect their child from judgment and whispers. I promise, Auka said solemnly, placing her hand over her heart. Amarashi's secret is safe with me. And with those words, she became part of a protective circle around the special child, a guardian of a truth that would shape years to come. As dawn broke, painting the sky in soft pinks and golds, the village awakened to the news of Amaraki's birth. They marveled at the length of Olu's pregnancy and speculated about what such a long wait might mean. But only 3 people knew the full truth about the extraordinary child who had chosen such a stormy night to enter the world, a truth that would remain hidden, wrapped around Amaraki like an invisible blanket, protecting her as she began her journey in life. As Amarashi grew into childhood, her quiet nature became as distinctive as the morning sun over the village hills. Unlike other children who splashed and played freely in the village stream, laughing and calling to each other in the afternoon heat, Amaraki found her own hidden spots to bathe. She would wait until the sun began to set, when most villagers had returned home, to slip away to a secluded bend in the stream, sheltered by thick bushes and overhanging branches. Her need for privacy shaped every aspect of her daily life. When nature called, Amaraki would patiently wait for moments when no one was around, finding solace in distant corners of the village where thick foliage provided natural screens. She developed an intricate mental map of quiet places, timing her movements like a careful dance between public and private moments. Yet, despite her reserved nature, Amaraki's heart shone bright as a harvest moon. When old Mama Zara struggled with her heavy water pot, Amaraki would appear like a gentle breeze, quietly taking the burden without fanfare. If little Chidi fell and scraped his knee, she would be there with healing herbs and soft words of comfort. When the village's youngest children couldn't reach ripe mangoes on high branches, Amaraki would help them, her smile as sweet as the fruit she gathered. The villagers noticed how she moved through their community like a blessing present when needed, yet somehow always maintaining her space. They watched as she found ways to join in village life while keeping her boundaries intact. During festivals, she would help prepare food in the communal kitchen, but always chose tasks that let her work slightly apart from the crowd. At community gatherings, she would sit at the edge of the circle, participating with her gentle smile while maintaining her careful distance. Her beauty became legendary in the village, not just her physical grace, but the way she carried herself with quiet dignity. The way sunlight caught her eyes when she smiled made people think of stars reflecting in still water. Even the most boisterous children would lower their voices around her, sensing something special in her calm presence. Adults in the village would often say to their children, "Be more like Amaraki, see how she helps without being asked." They admired how she could be both present and apart, like a butterfly that graces a flower before floating away. The village elders would nod approvingly when she passed, noting how she honored their traditions while dancing to her own quiet rhythm. What appeared to others as simple shyness was, in truth, a carefully choreographed ballet of privacy and presence. Amarachi had learned to wrap her secret in layers of gentle behavior, like a precious gift protected by soft cloth. She became known as the village's quiet blessing, the girl who could turn helping others into an art while maintaining her own mysterious space, like a moon that touches everything with its light while remaining forever just out of reach. When Ta, the village's most sought-after young man, asked for Amaraki's hand in marriage, the entire community erupted in celebration. Ta was everything a bride could dream of, tall and strong, with kind eyes that crinkled when he smiled, and a gentleness that matched Amaraki's own. Their wedding day transformed the village into a festival of color and joy, with drums beating from sunrise to moonrise, and dancers whirling in vibrant clothes that painted the air like butterfly wings. The celebration lasted 3 full days. Women prepared feasts that made tables groan under their weight, while men roasted whole goats over open fires. Children scattered flower petals in Amaraki's path as she walked to the ceremony, resplendent in her wedding clothes that sparkled like morning dew. When Ta took her hand before the village elders, their eyes met with such tenderness that old women wiped away tears, remembering their own wedding days. But as the last echoes of celebration faded and married life began, shadows crept into their newfound happiness. Each night when Ta reached for his wife with love in his eyes, Amaraki would find gentle ways to delay their intimacy. "Not yet, my love," she would whisper, her voice soft but firm. "The time isn't right," she would turn away, her heart heavy with unspoken truths, while Ta lay beside her, confusion growing like evening shadows. Days stretched into weeks, and the village's keen eyes noticed the distance between the newlyweds. Whispers began at the well, where women gathered with their water pots. They spread through the market, where traders exchanged gossip as readily as goods. "Have you noticed?" they would murmur. "Ta and Amarachi, they're not like other newlyweds. Something isn't right." The weight of these whispers pressed heavily on Ta's shoulders. His smile, once as bright as morning sun, began to dim. He walked through the village with his head slightly bowed, avoiding the questioning glances of his friends. Eventually, his worry drove him to seek counsel from Amarachi's parents, his voice thick with emotion as he confessed his concerns. "I love your daughter more than life itself," he told them, sitting in their compound as evening settled around them. "But there's a wall between us I cannot breach. What am I doing wrong?" Amaraki's parents exchanged glances heavy with their secret knowledge, their hearts torn between protecting their daughter and helping their son-in-law. They offered him vague comfort, speaking of patience and understanding, but their words only deepened his confusion. Finally, desperate for guidance, Ta took his troubles to the village elders. They listened gravely under the ancient baobab tree, their faces weathered with wisdom and concern. But even they, with all their years of solving village disputes, found themselves unable to offer clear counsel. The happiness that had bloomed so brightly at the wedding began to wilt, leaving behind questions that grew louder with each passing day. The weight of silence finally became too heavy for Amaraki to bear alone. One humid afternoon, she sought out Kachi, her childhood friend, whose laughter had always been as warm as the midday sun. Finding her grinding millet outside her compound, Amaraki's heart thundered like distant storm clouds as she approached. "Kachi," she whispered, her voice trembling like leaves in the wind, "I need to tell you something. Something I've never told anyone." Kachi set aside her grinding stone, noting the unusual shadow in her friend's eyes. They retreated to the privacy of Kachi's hut, where the familiar scent of cooking fires and herbs created a cocoon of safety. There, in the filtered light, Amaraki unwrapped her long-held secret. Her words came slowly at first, like hesitant raindrops before a downpour, as she explained how she was born different, with both male and female characteristics. Kachi listened with wide eyes but an open heart, reaching out to hold her friend's trembling hands. "Oh, Amaraki," Kachi breathed, pulling her into a tight embrace. "You're still you, the same beautiful soul who has always been my friend." For a moment, Amaraki felt lighter than she had in years, as if sharing her truth had wings. But secrets in their village had a way of slipping through the tightest grasp, like water through cupped hands. That evening, Kachi, overwhelmed by the weight of what she'd learned, confided in her mother, who whispered it to her sister, who shared it with her husband. The secret spread through the village like wildfire in the dry season, growing and changing with each retelling. By sunrise, the whispers had reached every corner of the village. Women at the well fell silent when Amarachi approached. Men looked away, their discomfort visible in stiff shoulders and averted eyes. Children, who once played freely around her, were pulled away by cautious parents. The village's warm embrace turned cold as morning mist. When the truth reached Tar, it hit him like a physical blow. The mystery of his wife's reluctance suddenly became clear, but understanding brought both relief and betrayal. He found her in their compound, her eyes already knowing that their world had shifted. "Why didn't you trust me enough to tell me?" he asked, his voice cracking like dry earth. The love in his eyes now mixed with hurt and confusion. "I would have understood. I would have protected you." But the words came too late. The village's judgment fell swift and heavy. That evening, with the sun bleeding red into the horizon, Ta suggested Amarachi should leave their home until things settle. She packed her few belongings in silence, tears falling like quiet rain. On the village's edge stood an abandoned hut, almost hidden by overgrown brush and weeping willow trees. This became Amarachi's sanctuary and prison, a place where she could hide from the stares and whispers that had replaced the love she once knew. There, surrounded by the sounds of nature rather than human voices, she learned to live with her exposed truth and its bitter consequences. As the seasons turned, darkness fell upon the once prosperous village. The rains that had faithfully blessed their lands each year failed to appear, leaving the earth cracked and barren. Crops withered in the fields, their leaves curling like fingers grasping for water that wouldn't come. The village stream, once rushing with life-giving water, dwindled to a mere trickle. But it wasn't just the drought that haunted them. When night descended, strange sounds echoed through the village, wails that couldn't be traced to any human or animal, shadows that moved against the wind. Children woke screaming from nightmares they couldn't describe, and even the bravest hunters refused to venture into the forest after sunset. The air itself seemed heavy with unseen presences. During these dark times, villagers would gather in small groups, their voices hushed as they shared stories of the latest supernatural occurrence. Some spoke of seeing figures dancing in the moonlight that vanished when approached. Others told of household items moving on their own, and of hearing their names called by voices they knew belonged to the dead. Desperate for answers, the village elders made the treacherous journey to consult the oracle, a mystic who lived in a cave at the edge of their known world. Inside the cave, thick with incense smoke and flickering shadows, the oracle fell into a trance. His voice, when it came, seemed to echo from the depths of the earth itself. "The gods are angry," he intoned, his eyes rolling back to show only whites. "The balance has been disturbed. Only a pure sacrifice can restore harmony, one untouched by man, whose body holds special power. The gods demand this offering at the sacred cliff where earth meets sky." The elders returned with this prophecy, and the search for a suitable sacrifice began. Young women were questioned about their purity, but none could meet the oracle's requirements. As days passed and conditions worsened, fear grew like a poisonous vine throughout the village. Then, in whispered conversations around cooking fires, someone remembered Amarachi, she who lived alone at the village's edge, who had never known a man's touch. The same Amarachi they had shunned for her difference might now be their salvation. The suggestion spread quickly through the village. People who had avoided her gaze now spoke of her with renewed interest. "She's pure," they whispered. "And didn't the oracle speak of special power? Perhaps her uniqueness is a sign from the gods themselves." The elders, carrying the weight of their community's survival, made their way to Amaraki's secluded hut. They found her tending to her small garden, somehow coaxing life from the parched earth. As they explained their purpose, Amaraki listened quietly, her face illuminated by the setting sun. Understanding dawned in her eyes. This was her chance to transform from outcast to savior. Without hesitation, she agreed to be the sacrifice, her voice steady as she accepted the role that might finally give meaning to her difference. The procession to the sacred cliff began in silence. Amarachi led the way, carrying the ritual offerings, while the villagers followed at a respectful distance. Their footsteps stirred up dust from the drought-parched earth, creating a hazy golden cloud around them. The path wound through withered fields and past the dried-up stream, stark reminders of why they walked this solemn path. As dawn painted the sky in shades of gold and pink, Amarachi emerged from her hut, wearing a simple white robe. The village elders had brought sacred offerings, fragrant herbs, precious grains, and a small lamb adorned with ribbons. Her face showed no fear, only a serene determination that made her seem to glow from within. At the cliff's edge, where the earth seemed to touch the heavens, Amarachi arranged the offerings with careful precision. The morning breeze carried the sweet scent of burning herbs as she began to chant, her voice rising and falling like waves against the shore. The ancient words, passed down through generations, rolled from her tongue as if she had known them all her life. Suddenly the wind picked up, whipping her white robe around her like wings. Dark clouds gathered overhead with supernatural speed, swirling directly above where she stood. The villagers gasped as the temperature dropped, and static electricity crackled in the air. Amarachi's chanting grew stronger, her arms raised to the turbulent sky above. A brilliant bolt of lightning split the heavens, striking the ground where Amarachi stood. The flash was so bright that the villagers had to shield their eyes. When they looked again, Amarachi lay motionless on the ground. For a heart-stopping moment, silence reigned. Then, the first drop of rain fell. It started slowly, one drop, then another, then dozens, hundreds, thousands, until the parched earth drank deeply of the life-giving water. As the rain poured down, Amarachi stirred and slowly sat up. Her face radiated joy and wonder as she touched her body, discovering the change that had occurred. "It's gone," she cried out, her voice carrying over the sound of the rain. "The gods have heard us. They've made me whole." The male characteristics she had been born with had vanished, transformed by divine intervention. She stood, raising her face to the rain, laughing with pure joy as water streamed down her cheeks, mingling with tears. The villagers rushed forward, touching her in amazement, feeling the reality of the miracle that had occurred before their eyes. They danced in the rain, their clothes soaked but their hearts light with wonder and relief. The drought was broken, and their Amarachi, had been transformed. As they celebrated, the sun broke through the rain clouds, creating a brilliant rainbow that arced across the sky. It seemed to end right where Amarachi stood, as if nature itself was crowning her with its blessing. The village's savior had become something more, a living testament to the powers of faith, courage, and divine grace. In the days following Amarachi's miraculous transformation, the village bloomed like a garden after the first rains. Where once there had been whispers and averted eyes, now there were warm smiles and open arms. The villagers, humbled by their witness to divine intervention, approached Amarachi with a new understanding that transformed their hearts as surely as the gods had transformed her body. Ta, who had watched the ceremony from afar, was among the first to seek her forgiveness. He found her by the now flowing stream, her face peaceful as she watched the water dance over stones. Kneeling before her, his voice thick with emotion, he spoke from his heart. "Amarachi," he said, taking her hands in his, "I was blind before. I saw only what I wanted to see, not the courage and beauty of your whole self. Will you grant me the honor of beginning again? Will you marry me once more, this time with no secrets between us?" Her smile, radiant as the sun after storm clouds part, gave him his answer before her words could form. The village erupted in joy at the news of their renewed engagement. This time they would celebrate not just a union of two people, but the healing of their entire community. Their second wedding was unlike any the village had seen before. The celebration lasted 7 days, each one dedicated to a different aspect of their journey. On the first day, they honored transformation, with dancers performing the story of Amarachi's sacrifice. The second day celebrated courage, the third truth, and so on, until the final day celebrated love in all its forms. Under an arch woven with fresh flowers, Ta and Amarachi exchanged vows that spoke not only of their love but of their growth. The village watched with tears of joy as the couple sealed their promise with a kiss that seemed blessed by the gods themselves. But the true beauty of their story lay in how it changed the village forever. Amaraki became more than just a bride or a miracle. She became a symbol of hope for anyone who felt different or misunderstood. Parents would tell their children her story, teaching them that what makes someone different might also make them extraordinary. The village itself was transformed. Where once they had been quick to judge, they learned to look with kinder eyes. When a child was born with a clubfoot the following year, instead of hiding the baby away, the parents brought him proudly to the village square. He too is special, they declared, and the villagers agreed, remembering the lessons Amaraki had taught them. As seasons passed, travelers from distant villages would come to hear the tale of the woman who had been touched by the gods. They would find Amarachi and Tal living in joy, their home always on to those seeking understanding or acceptance. The story of their love and the village's transformation became a beacon of hope, proving that even the deepest prejudices could be washed away by the rains of understanding and compassion. In every village there are stories that shape the hearts of those who tell them, and the tale of Amaraki became such a legend, one that parents would share with their children under starlit skies, one that elders would recount during festivals, and one that would forever change how the village viewed differences among its people. At its core, this was a story about acceptance not just of others, but of oneself. Amarashi's journey from a child bearing a heavy secret to a woman who saved her village taught them that our differences are not burdens to be hidden, but gifts waiting to be understood. Her transformation wasn't just physical, it was a mirror reflecting the transformation needed in every heart that had ever turned away from someone who was different. The village itself became a testament to how communities can change. Like a mighty river that slowly shapes the rocks it flows over, the power of Amaraki's story gradually eroded old prejudices and fears. The same people who had once whispered behind closed doors now spoke openly about acceptance. They learned that community strength comes not from uniformity, but from embracing the unique qualities each person brings. Her sacrifice for the village proved that the greatest acts of courage often come from those whom society has pushed to the margins. When drought threatened their survival, it wasn't the strongest warrior or the wealthiest merchant who saved them, it was Amaraki, the one they had shunned. She showed them that sometimes the very thing that makes someone different might be exactly what the community needs most. Amaraki's resilience became legendary. Like a young tree that bends in strong winds but doesn't break, she had endured years of hiding, of careful movements and quiet adaptations. Yet instead of becoming bitter, she remained kind, her spirit unbroken. Her strength wasn't in wielding power over others, but in maintaining her dignity and compassion even when faced with rejection. The value of living truthfully blazed bright through her story. Though the path of authenticity had been difficult and frightening, it ultimately led to her freedom. She taught the village that pretending to be something you're not builds walls between hearts, while honest vulnerability creates bridges of understanding. Perhaps most importantly, her story illuminated how vital community support can be. When the village finally embraced Amaraki, they didn't just accept her, they created a space where others could also be their true selves. Like a garden where different flowers bloom together, the village learned that their diversity made them more beautiful, not less. This tale, passed down through generations, became more than just a story, it became a promise. A promise that being different doesn't mean being alone. A promise that communities can learn and grow. A promise that love, in its purest form, sees beyond the surface to the truth of who we are. And so when visitors asked why their village was so accepting of those who were different, the elders would smile and say, "Let us tell you about Amarachi and how her courage taught us to see with our hearts instead of our eyes."